I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who ended up telling a story like this, but life has a way of humbling you, doesn't it? Let me start with a question. What would you do if the person you trusted most in this world, the one you shared your home, your meals, your children, and your future with, turned out to be living a whole other life you knew nothing about? It sounds like the kind of thing you only see in movies, or maybe read in the back of a magazine at the salon. But it happened to me, and it broke me in ways I didn't even know a person could break. I was born in the late 1950s, a small-town girl who believed in big love. My parents raised me on the values of loyalty, hard work, and keeping your word. So when I met Henry Toll Charming, with a smile that could melt a frozen river, I thought I had stumbled upon the love story I had always dreamed of. We married young. I was barely 21, and he was 24. Our wedding was nothing extravagant, a simple church ceremony, white roses from my grandmother's garden, and a reception in the local hall, where everyone brought a dish to share. But to me, it was perfect. In those early years, we didn't have much. He worked at a factory, and I took shifts as a cashier while going to night school. We scraped and saved, pinching pennies, laughing about the days when instant noodles were a luxury. But through all the struggles, we leaned on each other, or at least, I thought we did. Over time, we built what looked like a good life. We bought a modest house on the edge of town. We had 2 children, a boy and a girl. From the outside, people said we were the picture of a steady, dependable family, and I believed it too. Yes, Henry worked a lot, sometimes late nights, sometimes weekends. Yes, he seemed to have a circle of friends I didn't know well. But isn't that normal in marriage? You don't have to share everything, right? That's what I told myself. I trusted him, blindly, fiercely, the way a wife is supposed to. But if I'm being honest, little cracks showed themselves early on. There were times when he'd come home with a story that didn't quite add up, times when his phone would ring, and he'd step outside to answer it, whispering just out of earshot, times when I'd catch a strange look on his face, built panic. But when I asked, he'd brush me off with a chuckle, telling me I was imagining things. And I believed him, because believing the lie was easier than facing the unthinkable. Still, something inside me stirred, a quiet unease I buried under chores, children, and routine. Then came Mrs. Jennings. She was the kind of neighbor who knew everything about everyone. The unofficial town reporter. One afternoon, as we were pruning roses in the front yard, she leaned over and said, "You know, Henry sure spends a lot of time on the west side of town. Ever wonder why?" I laughed it off, pretending it didn't bother me. "Oh, probably just work," I said, clipping a stem. But her words stayed with me. They lodged themselves in the back of my mind like a splinter, aching quietly, refusing to let go. Over the years, Henry's absences became noticeable. There were birthdays he missed, school plays where the kids asked why Daddy wasn't there, anniversaries that passed with only a half-hearted excuse. "Sorry, honey, work called me in. You know how the overtime goes." Or, my personal favorite, "I'm doing this for us, for our future." And I wanted to believe him. God help me, I did, because the alternative was too painful to consider. But suspicion is a strange thing. It starts small, like a whisper in the back of your mind. Then it grows louder, until it's screaming at you, demanding you look closer. I found myself watching him more closely, checking his laundry for receipts or notes, noticing the cologne I hadn't bought him, the shirts I didn't recognize. I even started timing his drives. If he said he was working late, I'd note when he left, when he returned, how long it should have taken. And every so often, the math didn't line up. But still I said nothing, because silence was easier than confrontation. Then came the day when the truth slipped into the light. It started like any other ordinary Thursday. I was cleaning the house, folding laundry, and humming to myself. Henry had left his jacket draped over a chair, and in the pocket, I found a folded receipt from a little diner, one not anywhere near his workplace. The receipt was dated for Tuesday night, the night he told me he was at the factory fixing an urgent problem. But here was proof. He had been across town, and not alone. 2 meals, 2 drinks, 1 dessert. I felt my stomach twist into knots. I sat on the couch, clutching that little slip of paper like it was a grenade. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding in my chest. Every laugh we'd shared, every kiss, every whispered "I love you," all of it replayed in my head. Was it real? Or had I been living in a lie from the very beginning? By morning, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. The woman staring back at me had dark circles under her eyes, worry etched into every line of her face. And I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't ignore this anymore. I didn't confront him right away. Something inside me told me to wait, to watch, to gather proof. So I became a detective in my own marriage. Every call, every errand, every excuse, I noted it all. I even asked my friend Clara to drive past that diner during the evenings, just to see if she noticed anything. And one night, she called me. Her voice was hushed but urgent. "Sweetheart," she said, "you won't believe this. I just saw Henry at the diner, with a woman and children." I felt the blood drain from my face. Children. What did she mean? Children. Before I continue, I want to pause and say this. This story involves betrayal and family secrets. I'll keep the details respectful, but if you've ever gone through something like this, please take care of your heart as you listen. From that night onward, my life was consumed by questions. Who was that woman? Whose children were those? Why was my husband there, laughing with them like he was theirs? I tried to act normal at home, cooking dinner, folding laundry, pretending like nothing was wrong, but inside, I was unraveling. Some nights, I'd curl up on the bathroom floor, muffling my sobs so the kids wouldn't hear. Other nights, I'd pace the living room, clutching that diner receipt like it held the answers. And still, Henry carried on, as if nothing was wrong. He kissed me on the cheek, asked about the kids' grades, laughed at TV shows with us. The audacity of it nearly drove me mad. It was then I decided I needed the truth, not guesses, not suspicions, the truth, and I knew the only way to get it was to follow him. But that's a story for the next part. If you've been listening this far, let me ask you, would you have confronted him right away, or would you have waited, like I did? It's something I still wonder about, even now. The night I made up my mind to follow Henry, I barely slept. My heart wouldn't stop pounding. I told myself maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe there was an explanation, but deep down, I already knew. Sometimes your spirit recognizes the truth before your mind is ready to admit it. The next evening, Henry said he had to work late. Those words had become a trigger. My stomach knotted instantly. I kissed him on the cheek like always, smiled, and told him to be safe. The moment the door shut, my mask dropped. I grabbed my coat, my car keys, and followed him into the night. I kept my headlights off until I was far enough back not to be noticed. My hands trembled on the wheel. Every turn he made, every stoplight he passed, I felt like I was chasing the ghost of a man I thought I knew. He didn't head toward the factory. No, he turned west, toward that other side of town, the part I never had reason to visit. He pulled into a quiet neighborhood, one with tree-lined streets and tidy little houses. I slowed down, giving him space. He parked in front of a yellow house with white shutters. My breath caught in my throat. Because he didn't just park, he got out like it was the most natural thing in the world, walked up the steps, and knocked. And then I saw it. The door opened, and there she was. A woman, younger than me by maybe 10 years, pretty, with her hair pulled back in a simple bun. She smiled at him like she'd been waiting all day. And then, God help me, 2 children ran up behind her, squealing, "Daddy's home." I nearly threw up right there in the car. Daddy's home. The words rang in my ears, slicing me open. My Henry, my husband, my children's father. He had another family. A whole other family, just blocks away from where I was raising ours. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Tears blurred my vision. I wanted to burst out of the car, scream, demand answers, but I couldn't move. My legs felt cemented to the floor, so I just sat there, watching him step inside that house, his arm draped casually around that woman's shoulders, the children hanging off his coat like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. I don't know how long. I stayed parked on that street, shaking, crying silently, long enough to see the lights flicker on in the living room, long enough to see the silhouettes of them together at the dinner table, passing plates, laughing, clinking glasses. He was living the same life with her that he was with me. And in that moment, I realized I was not the only wife. I was the other woman, too, and I hadn't even known it. The drive home was a blur. My mind replayed every excuse he had ever given me, every late night, every "I'm doing this for us." And now, I saw the truth. He wasn't building a future for us. He was splitting his life in two, feeding both sides just enough lies to keep us quiet. When he finally came home, hours later, I was sitting in the kitchen, a cup of cold coffee in my hands. I looked at him and tried to see the man I married. but all I saw was a stranger. He kissed me on the forehead just like always, and said, "Sorry, honey, long shift." The taste of betrayal burned my tongue, but I swallowed it down. I said nothing. Not yet, because now I needed to know how deep this ran. Over the next few weeks, I watched him closely. Every excuse, every errand, every shift. And sure enough, there was a pattern. 3 nights a week, sometimes more, he disappeared into that other world. I followed him twice more, each time to that same house. And each time, the woman and the children greeted him with open arms. I started piecing together details. The boy looked about 7, the girl maybe 5, which meant he had been seeing her for years. He hadn't just stumbled into this. He had built an entire parallel life, one that started while I was still carrying his youngest child in my belly. The betrayal went back that far. Do you know what's worse than betrayal? It's realizing the person betraying you is so practiced, so comfortable in their lies, that they make you feel like you're the one losing your mind. That's what Henry did to me. He laughed when I asked too many questions. He called me paranoid, dramatic, insecure, and all the while, he was kissing another woman goodnight, tucking other children into bed. The rage inside me grew, but so did the grief. I felt like a widow mourning, a man who was still alive, the husband I thought I had never really existed. And yet, here he was, breathing the same air as me, sitting at the same table, looking me in the eye, as though nothing was wrong. One night, after he came home, I asked him gently, "Henry, do you ever think about what our lives would look like if you had chosen differently?" He gave me a puzzled smile and shook his head. "What do you mean?" he asked. My throat tightened, but I forced a smile. "Oh, nothing. Just wondering." But inside, I was screaming, because I already knew he had chosen differently, and he was living it just across town. I started writing everything down in a notebook. Dates, times, places. I even described the children, what clothes they wore, what toys they played with in the yard. It felt like I was collecting evidence in a trial, but the truth was, I was collecting proof that my life was not what I thought it was. I needed it in black and white, because otherwise I feared I would go insane, convincing myself it was just a bad dream. Sometimes, I wondered if I should confront the woman, march up to her door, tell her who I was, and demand she release him back to me. But then the other thought crept in. What if she thought she was the only wife? What if he had told her lies? What if she thought I was the mistress? The thought made me sick, because no matter how you cut it, one of us had been living a lie, maybe both. The days bled into nights. I'd sit at the dinner table with my children, forcing a smile, while inside I wanted to scream. I looked at their innocent faces and thought, do they deserve to know? Should they ever know? That was the hardest part, protecting them from a truth that would shatter their world, the same way it shattered mine. Finally, one night, the dam inside me broke. He came home late again, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. I stood in the doorway, blocking his path. "Henry," I said, my voice trembling but steady, "where were you tonight?" He looked startled for a moment, then smirked, like he always did. "Work, honey, you know how it is." My hands shook, but I pulled the folded receipt from my pocket, the first one I had found. "Funny," I whispered, "because this says you were at Miller's diner. And I've seen you there, with her, with them." The color drained from his face. For the first time, I saw the mask slip. He opened his mouth, but no words came, just silence, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. The silence between us stretched so long I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. He finally stammered, "It's not what you think." Isn't that always the line? The script cheaters must learn by heart. My chest burned. I laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "Then tell me, Henry, what exactly do I think? That you've been living a double life, that you've been playing husband to me and daddy to them." He ran his hand through his hair, pacing the kitchen like a trapped animal. His eyes darted everywhere but mine. "I never meant for it to go this far," he muttered. That sentence hit me like a slap. This far. As if another family was some casual mistake, like forgetting to pay a bill. The rage I had been bottling for years finally erupted. "You lied to me, to our children. Every single time you walked through this door, you made me feel like I was crazy for doubting you. And all the while, you were building a life with someone else." My voice shook, not from fear, but from fury. He dropped into a chair, his face buried in his hands. "I love you," he said quietly, "but I love her too." The world tilted. My knees nearly gave out. Love. He dared to call that love. Love doesn't split itself in half. Love doesn't rip apart families. Love doesn't force a woman to sit alone at night while her husband is tucking in children who don't. even share her blood. I leaned on the counter for support, my hands trembling. Do they know about me? I asked, my voice cracked like glass. He hesitated, then shook his head. No, to them, I'm just theirs. I swallowed hard. So I wasn't just betrayed, I was erased. A ghost in my own marriage. I wanted to scream, throw dishes, slam doors, but instead, I felt this eerie calm wash over me, almost like my body knew if I let the storm out, I'd never stop. I whispered, "Get out." He looked up at me, startled. "What? You heard me," I said, my voice steady now. "Get out of this house, right now." For the first time in our marriage, he didn't argue. He stood, grabbed his jacket, and walked to the door. Before he left, he turned back, his lips parted like he wanted to say something, an apology, maybe, or another excuse, but nothing came out. He just left. And with that click of the door, my life split in two. The kids woke up the next morning asking where Daddy was. I forced a smile, told them he had to leave early for work, but inside, my heart was breaking all over again. How do you explain to children that their father belongs to someone else's family, too? I couldn't. Not yet. That days turned into weeks. He didn't come back. He called once or twice, leaving voicemails I couldn't bear to listen to. I deleted them without pressing play. I was too raw, too shattered. And yet, despite everything, part of me kept replaying his words. "I love you, but I love her too." It was poison in my veins. I'd go to the grocery store and wonder if anyone else knew. Did the neighbors, did Mrs. Jennings, with her sharp eyes and wagging tongue, already know the whole truth? I felt like the entire town was in on a secret I had been the last to discover. One evening, I drove past that yellow house again. His car was there. The lights glowed warmly in the windows. Through the sheer curtains, I could make out the shapes of him and those children playing on the floor. He looked happy, too happy. I sat there in the dark, gripping the steering wheel, wondering if he ever laughed like that with our kids anymore, or if he ever did at all. That was when the bitterness started to settle in. It wasn't just betrayal, it was comparison. Was she prettier than me? Was she easier to love? Did her children deserve his attention more than mine? My mind spun in circles, tormenting me with questions I would never get answers to. One night, I poured myself a glass of wine and pulled out the old photo albums. Our wedding, our first home, birthdays, Christmas mornings, family picnics, page after page of memories that suddenly felt counterfeit. I stared at those smiling faces and thought, was he lying even then? It's a cruel thing, realizing your entire history is tainted by deceit. The kids began to notice his absence more. My son asked, "Mom, why isn't Dad home as much?" I brushed his hair back and forced a smile. "Daddy's busy with work, sweetheart." But inside, guilt clawed at me. I was lying now, too, protecting them from a truth I wasn't sure their little hearts could survive. The weight of it nearly crushed me. Some nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I should just pack up, take the children, and start over somewhere else. Somewhere his shadow couldn't reach me. But then reality hit. Where would we go? How would I provide for them on my own? And worse, could I really erase him from their lives, even if he had erased me from his? Then, one afternoon, there was a knock at the door. My stomach dropped when I opened it, because there she stood, the woman, the other wife, though neither of us had that title alone. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said softly, "We need to talk." My hand froze on the doorknob. I almost slammed it shut right there, but something in her face stopped me. She didn't look smug or victorious the way I'd imagined. She looked tired, nervous, maybe even broken, the way I was. I stepped aside, my voice barely a whisper. "Come in." She walked in slowly, her eyes darting around the living room like she was stepping into forbidden territory. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same table where I had confronted Henry weeks earlier. The silence was thick, almost unbearable, until she finally spoke. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't know." Those 3 words rattled through me. Didn't know. How could she not know? I clenched my hands together in my lap, my nails digging into my skin. "What do you mean you didn't know?" Her eyes filled with tears. "He told me he was divorced. He said you left him years ago, that you didn't want him anymore." My jaw dropped. Divorced. That was the story he fed her. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. "And you believed him?" She flinched, but she didn't look away. "Yes, why wouldn't I? He was with me almost every night. He was at the kids' birthdays, the school plays. He tucked them in every single night. He made me believe I was his only one." Her voice cracked on that last word. And suddenly, for the first time, I didn't just see her as the enemy. I saw her as another victim, another woman who had built her life on lies she never asked for. I swallowed hard. How long? I asked. My voice trembled, but I forced the question out. She wiped at her eyes and whispered, 9 years. 9 years. My stomach turned. That meant while I was busy raising our youngest, while I was cooking dinners alone and waiting for him to come home, he was there living another life, raising another set of children like they were his only ones. The room swam around me. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to steady my breathing. Do your kids know? I asked. She shook her head quickly. No, to them, he's just their dad, their only dad. They don't know about you, about your children. He kept you hidden from us just like he kept us hidden from you. Her words landed heavy. Hidden. That's what we both were. Halves of a secret he thought he could keep forever. We sat in silence for a long time, two women bound together by the same man's betrayal, staring at each other like mirrors, reflecting back pain. Finally, she whispered, "What do we do?" The question stunned me, because I didn't have an answer. What do you do when your lives have been built on the same lie? When the man you both trusted is the same man who destroyed you? I looked at her really. Looked at her. She wasn't the enemy. She was living in the same nightmare I was. And in that moment, I realized something. The fight wasn't between us. The fight was with him. I leaned back in my chair and said quietly, "We deserve the truth. All of it. Together." Her eyes widened, and slowly, she nodded. Then we confront him. Both of us. No more hiding. The thought terrified me, but it also sparked something in me I hadn't felt in weeks' strength. Maybe even hoped. The next day, she called him and told him she wanted to meet. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. She suggested the diner, the one he always took her to. And then she told me the time. I showed up early, sitting in the back corner where I could watch the door. My heart raced, palms sweaty, every muscle in my body tense. A few minutes later, he walked in, smiling, waving like nothing was wrong. And then he froze, because when his eyes landed on me, sitting across from her, his entire face drained of color. He turned to leave, but I stood. "Sit down, Henry." My voice was cold, steady, sharper than he'd ever heard it before. He hesitated, then shuffled over, sliding into the booth across from us. He looked like a man cornered, his eyes darting between us, searching for a way out. For a moment, none of us spoke. The clatter of dishes, the hum of conversation around Uset, all felt distant. Finally, I leaned forward and whispered, "How long were you planning to keep this up? How long were you going to keep playing husband to both of us?" He opened his mouth, but the other woman, her name was Margaret. I learned that they cut him off. "Don't lie, Henry. Not anymore. We both know the truth now. So tell us, what was your plan?" His shoulders slumped. He let out a shaky breath, running his hands down his face. "I never meant to hurt anyone," he muttered. My laugh was sharp, bitter. "Never meant to hurt anyone. You've been lying for nearly a decade. You've been splitting yourself in two, making promises to both of us, raising children in 2 homes. And you never meant to hurt anyone." He looked down at the table, ashamed. "Or maybe just caught. I didn't know how to choose," he said quietly. "I love you both." The words made my stomach churn. "No," I said firmly. "You don't love either of us, because love doesn't destroy people. Love doesn't force 2 women to sit here, holding the shattered pieces of their lives, while you sit there whining about choices you were too much of a coward to make." Margaret's voice shook, but she spoke up. "So what happens now, Henry? Do you expect us to just accept this? To share you like some prize you get to keep on 2 shelves? He didn't answer. His silence told me everything I needed to know. He wanted both lives, both families, and he thought he could have them. I leaned forward, my voice low but sharp. "No more lies, no more hiding. You're going to tell the truth to all of us, to me, to Margaret, to all of our children. They deserve to know who their father really is." His head snapped up, panic flashing in his eyes. "No," he hissed. "They don't need to know. They're too young. They wouldn't understand." I shook my head slowly. "They're stronger than you think, and they deserve honesty more than you deserve protection." He slammed his fist on the table, drawing stares from the other customers. "You can't do this," he whispered harshly. But I just stared back at him, unblinking. "Watch me." That was the moment I knew the power had shifted. For years, he had controlled the story, weaving lies to keep us all in place, but now, the truth was out, and he couldn't shove it back into the shadows. When I walked out of that diner, Margaret at my side, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Freedom. Painful, raw, terrifying freedom, because the truth had set me free, even if it had destroyed the life I thought I had. The hardest part of all of this wasn't finding out about him, or even confronting him. The hardest part was deciding what to tell the children, my children, our children, innocent souls who still looked at their father like he hung the moon. How do you shatter that image without shattering them? I spent nights pacing the living room, rehearsing conversations in my head. Sometimes I imagined telling them everything in one brutal sweep, ripping the bandage off. Other times I thought maybe I could soften it, tell half-truths, until they were old enough to understand, but deep down, I knew there was no gentle way to tell a child their father had been lying to them their whole lives. Finally, one Sunday afternoon, I sat them down at the kitchen table, the same table where I had once baked cookies with them, where we had blown out birthday candles, where I had sat alone staring at receipts and broken promises. My son, 12, sat across from me with his arms folded, suspicion already in his eyes. My daughter, 9, clutched her stuffed bear, swinging her legs nervously under the chair. I took a deep breath, my heart hammering. "I need to tell you something important," I began, my voice trembling. "Something about your father." Their eyes widened. My daughter hugged her bear tighter. My son leaned forward. "What about Dad?" he asked. The words caught in my throat. For a moment, I thought I couldn't do it, that maybe silence was kinder. But then I remembered Margaret's children, blissfully unaware, living in a bubble of lies. I couldn't let my children live in that same bubble. They deserved truth, even if it hurt. "Your father." I paused, my voice cracking. "Your father has another family." The words hung in the air like smoke. My son frowned. "Another family? What do you mean?" I swallowed hard. "He's been living with another woman, and they have children. He's been dividing his time between us and them." My daughter's face crumpled. She burst into tears, burying her face in her bear. My son's jaw tightened, his eyes filling with tears he refused to let fall. "So, he's been lying to us all this time?" I nodded, tears streaming down my own face. "Yes, and I'm so sorry. I didn't know either, not until recently. I never wanted this for you." My son pushed back his chair, storming off to his room, slamming the door so hard the house shook. My daughter climbed into my lap, sobbing into my chest. I held her close, rocking her, whispering, "It's not your fault. None of this is your fault." That night, I sat outside their bedrooms, listening to their quiet crying, feeling like the worst mother in the world. But I knew I had done the right thing. Lies protect no one. Lies only rot the foundation until everything collapses. The next day, Henry showed up. I hadn't invited him, but I knew this moment was inevitable. The children deserved to hear from him too. He walked in, his face pale, eyes hollow. He tried to smile at them, but they both recoiled. My son stood with his arms crossed, glaring. My daughter clung to me, hiding her face. He knelt down, his voice soft. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you." My son spat the words back at him. "But you did." Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Henry's eyes filled with tears. He reached out, but my daughter shook her head violently. "No," she whispered. "You lied." He froze, his hand dropping back to his side. He looked at me then, desperation in his eyes. But I had no sympathy left to give. I just shook my head. That night, after he left, I tucked my children into bed and kissed their foreheads. They looked so small, so fragile, yet braver than I ever felt. As I turned off the light, my son whispered, "We'll be okay, won't we, Mom?" I forced a smile. "Yes, sweetheart, we will." But when I crawled into my own bed, alone, the doubts crashed over me. Would we really be okay? Could I raise them alone, mend their broken hearts, rebuild a life from the ruins he had left behind? I didn't know. All I knew was that I had to try. The days after that were filled with questions. My children wanted to know about the other kids, the other woman. Did she know about us? Were they better? Did he love them more? Questions I had no answers to. Questions that sliced deeper than any knife. I tried to shield them, but truth has a way of seeping through. They saw the exhaustion in my eyes, the way my hands shook when the phone rang, the way my smile cracked under the weight of grief. Children notice more than we think. Meanwhile, Margaret called me. Her children were asking questions too. They wanted to know why their father seemed distracted, why he was gone longer than usual. She hadn't told them yet. She wasn't ready. She asked me how I did it, how I found the words. I told her the truth. I didn't. The words found me, tearing out of me like they had been waiting years to escape. Sometimes we talked for hours, two women on opposite ends of the same storm, clinging to each other for survival. Strange, isn't it? The woman I once thought was my enemy became the only one who truly understood my pain. Henry, on the other hand, tried to juggle. He showed up at our door with gifts, with excuses, with promises. But the children weren't fooled anymore. They saw through him, just like I did. Every time he walked away, their eyes hardened a little more, and mine did too. I started to realize something. Yes, he had broken me. Yes, he had shattered our family. But he hadn't destroyed me, because every morning, I still got up. I still made breakfast. I still kissed scraped knees and signed permission slips and folded laundry. Life didn't stop just because he broke his vows. One night, as I was tucking my daughter in, she looked up at me with big, tear-filled eyes and whispered, "Mommy, are we enough? Just us three." My throat tightened, but I smiled through my tears. "More than enough, sweetheart. We always were." And in that moment, I realized maybe we would be okay after all. The weeks turned into months, and little by little, our lives found a rhythm. A broken rhythm, yes, but still a rhythm. I stopped waiting for Henry's footsteps on the porch, stopped glancing at the driveway hoping his car would appear. Instead, I poured all my energy into the children, into healing, into making our home feel safe again. It wasn't easy. The nights were the hardest. When the house fell quiet, my thoughts grew loud. I replayed every moment of our marriage, dissecting them like puzzle pieces. How many times had he lied while looking me in the eye? How many birthdays did he split between us and them? How many I love yous were hollow, rehearsed lines, spoken to two different women? Sometimes the bitterness threatened to consume me. I would clench my fists and feel rage bubbling up, a kind of anger I didn't even know I was capable of. And then I would look at my children's faces, and I knew I couldn't let that rage define me. They didn't need a mother lost in fury. They needed a mother who showed them that even when the ground beneath you crumbles, you can still stand tall. Henry tried to worm his way back in, of course. He would call, sometimes late at night, slurring his words, begging me to give him another chance. Other times, he would show up at school events, standing awkwardly at the back of the auditorium while our children avoided his eyes. He thought buying gifts could fix what he broke: new bikes, expensive sneakers, shiny gadgets. But my children weren't fooled. They didn't want things. They wanted the father he could never be. There was one evening I'll never forget. My son, old enough now to see the world in harsh truths, confronted him in our driveway. "Why'd you do it?" he demanded, his voice cracking with anger. "Why'd you need another family when you had us?" Henry's face went pale. He stammered, reaching out, but my son stepped back. His little fists were balled at his sides. "You don't get to call me son anymore," he spat. And with that, he walked inside, slamming the door behind him. I stood there, watching Henry crumble, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. But instead of rushing to comfort him, I just felt empty. There was a time when his tears would have broken me. Now, they meant nothing. He was finally feeling a fraction of the pain he had caused. Inside, I found my boy sitting on the couch, staring at the floor. I sat beside him, pulling him into my arms even though he stiffened at first. After a long silence, he whispered, "I don't want to be like him, Mom." Evera kissed his forehead, tears stinging my eyes. "You won't be," I told him. "You already know the value of honesty, of loyalty." That's something he never understood. Those words stayed with me, because in the middle of this wreckage, something was happening. My children were growing stronger. They were learning lessons far too early. Yes, but lessons that would shape them into better people. And I was learning too. I learned that I had spent too long defining myself through Henry's approval, his presence, his promises. Without him, I thought I would be nothing. But standing there, with two children who still needed me, who still loved me, I realized I was so much more than his wife. I was a mother, a provider, a fighter. I started doing little things for myself again. Things I had forgotten. I loved gardening in the mornings, feeling the earth in my hands, baking bread, the smell filling the house, comforting us in ways words couldn't. I even joined a book club at the library, where women gathered once a week to laugh, cry, and talk about stories, both the ones in the books and the ones in our lives. The first time I laughed again, really laughed, I startled myself. It felt strange, foreign, but also like sunlight breaking through clouds. For so long, I thought joy was gone forever. But it wasn't. It was just waiting for me to claim it again. One day, I ran into Margaret at the grocery store. At first, it was awkward, two women tied together by betrayal. But then she smiled, weary but genuine. "How are you holding up?" she asked. I shrugged. gripping my cart tighter. Some days good, some days bad. She nodded knowingly. Same. Then she looked at me with tears in her eyes. You know, it's not our fault. What he did, we didn't fail. He did. Her words sank deep into me. I had been carrying so much guilt, as if somehow I had caused his betrayal. But she was right. We weren't the ones who broke the vows. We weren't the liars. We weren't the ones sneaking across town. That was him, and him alone. After that, Margaret and I spoke often. We were no longer rivals, but allies. Two women determined to rebuild from the ashes. Months later, as the seasons changed, I looked around my little home and saw something incredible. Peace. Not perfection. Not yet, but peace. My children smiled more. Their laughter returned, cautious at first, then freer with each passing day. We made new traditions: Friday movie nights, Saturday morning pancakes, Sunday walks in the park, little rituals that stitched our broken hearts back together. And me, I began to see myself differently, not as a victim, but as a survivor, not as a woman abandoned, but as a woman reborn. I stopped waiting for Henry to choose us, to love us enough, because I realized we were already enough. We always had been. Of course, the scars remain. Betrayal doesn't vanish. There are still nights when I wake up in a cold sweat, memories replaying like old films. There are still moments when my daughter asks if her father loves her, and I have to swallow the lump in my throat before answering. But scars are proof of healing. They remind us of what we endured, but also of how far we've come. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, my son turned to me. Mom, he said quietly, thank you for staying, for fighting for us. Double quotes. Tears filled my eyes as I pulled him close. Always, I whispered, always. And in that moment, I knew we had made it through the storm, not unscathed, not unchanged, but stronger, wiser, more unbreakable than before. Because sometimes, when the person you trusted most destroys you, you discover a truth more powerful than any betrayal. You don't need them to survive. You never did. It wasn't until nearly a year after everything came crashing down that the final piece of this painful puzzle settled into place. Henry had been unraveling, and I could see it from afar. His lies had caught up with him. He was stretched too thin. 2 households, 2 sets of bills, 2 sets of children with questions and anger. I didn't need to be inside his home to know it. The lines on his face, the slump of his shoulders, the desperation in his voice whenever he called told me enough. At first, I thought I would feel pity. Once upon a time, I would have rushed in to help him carry the weight. But not anymore. Not after what he did to us. I had hardened in places I didn't know could harden. Watching him stumble through the wreckage he created, I felt nothing but distance, like I was looking at a stranger. One night, he came to the house unannounced. The kids were in their rooms, and I was in the kitchen cleaning up dinner. When I opened the door, he looked like a shadow of the man I once knew. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. He smelled of whiskey and regret. Please, he said, his voice cracking. Please let me in, just for a little while. I didn't move aside. I leaned against the frame, arms crossed. Why? What more is there to say? He shook his head, running his hands through his hair. They're gone, he whispered. Margaret, she kicked me out. She said she's done. The kids won't talk to me. His chest heaved. I lost them, and I lost you. I have nothing. For a moment, his words echoed in my chest. Once, that confession would have broken me. I would have felt his pain as my own, desperate to patch his wounds, but not anymore. You had everything, I said softly, my voice like steel. You had me. You had our children, and you threw it away. He dropped his gaze, tears sliding down his cheeks. I know. I don't even know why I did it. I was selfish, stupid. And now I'm alone. I felt a flicker of something: sadness, maybe, but not for him. For the wasted years, for the time my children could have had with a father who truly loved them, instead of one who split his soul in two. I can't fix this for you, Henry, I said firmly. You broke it, and I won't let you break us again. His shoulders slumped. He nodded slowly, defeated. Then he turned and walked away, his figure swallowed by the darkness. I closed the door behind him, my hand trembling not with fear, but with finality. That was the last time he ever stood on my porch. After that, something shifted inside me. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't checking the window or dreading his next call. He was gone, truly gone, and in his absence, peace bloomed. My children, though scarred, began to thrive. My daughter started painting, filling sketchbooks with colors that seemed to pour out of her soul. My son joined the school debate team, channeling his anger into sharp words and strong convictions. They were finding themselves, just as I was. And one quiet evening, sitting on the porch with a cup of tea, I realized something extraordinary. The betrayal that once threatened to destroy me had become the fire that forged me. I was stronger, wiser, and more resilient than I had ever been. People sometimes ask me if I regret marrying Henry, if I wish I had known sooner. And the truth, of course I wish I hadn't been deceived, but regret is a heavy chain, and I refuse to wear it. Because even in betrayal, life gave me my greatest treasures, my children, my strength, my voice. If you're listening to my story right now and you've ever been betrayed, I want you to hear me. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not defined by the lies of someone else. You can rise from the rubble. You can build again. Because I did. It took years, and tears, and nights of aching silence. But slowly, the wounds became scars, and the scars became proof that I survived. Proof that even when the person you trusted most tears your world apart, you can still stand, you can still smile, you can still live. Henry's downfall wasn't my victory, it was simply the natural consequence of his choices. My victory was something different. It was in every laugh that returned to my home, every hug from my children, every quiet morning I woke up and realized I no longer carried his weight on my shoulders. I won by choosing to keep going, by choosing to heal, by choosing to believe in love. Again, not his love, but the love that lived in me and in the family I still had, and that, in the end, was enough. When I look back now, years later, I sometimes wonder how I survived those days, the betrayal, the sleepless nights, the tears I tried to hide from my children. It felt endless at the time, like standing in the middle of a storm with no umbrella, no shelter, no way out. But storms don't last forever. One morning, I woke up and realized the ache in my chest wasn't as sharp as it once was. The silence of the house no longer felt haunting, but peaceful. The laughter of my children didn't sound like a fragile bandage, it sounded whole again. And that's when I knew we had made it through. Healing doesn't come in one grand, dramatic moment. It creeps in quietly, like sunlight slipping through the curtains. You don't notice it at first. You're too focused on the wreckage. But one day, you open your eyes, and the light is there. Warm, steady, real. I used to think Henry's betrayal defined me, that I would forever be the woman whose husband had another family. But that's not my story anymore. My story is that I arose, that I refused to let his lies be the end of me. My children carry scars, yes, but they also carry strength. They learned honesty by seeing what dishonesty destroys. They learned resilience by watching me rebuild. And I learned, through them, that love is not always about grand gestures or perfect families. Love is in the small things, sitting together at dinner, laughing at silly jokes, holding each other through tears. That's where the real magic lives. Sometimes people ask if I ever forgave him. Forgiveness is complicated. It doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean excusing. For me, forgiveness meant releasing myself from the chains of anger. I couldn't carry that bitterness forever. It would have poisoned me. So, in my heart, I let go, not for him, but for me. And Margaret. She and I still talk. Strange, isn't it? Two women, bound by betrayal, becoming friends. But life is full of strange turns. She told me once, we both deserved better, and now we're going to give that to ourselves. And she was right. We are more than the lies we were told. We are women who endured and kept moving forward. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Betrayal may break your heart, but it doesn't have to break your spirit. You get to decide what story you carry forward. So, if you're listening right now and you've been lied to, abandoned, or betrayed, please hear me when I say you are stronger than you think. You don't have to wait for anyone else to validate you, to choose you, to love you right. You can choose yourself. You can love yourself. You can build a life that is beautiful even after it's been broken. Because I did. And one day, you'll look back at the storm that nearly destroyed you, and you'll realize it gave you something to it, showed you your own strength. It taught you who you are when everything falls apart, and that person, the one who stands back up after being knocked down, that person is unstoppable. Now, I live a quieter life, a life of truth, of peace, of resilience. I don't need grand promises or elaborate gestures. I just need honesty, laughter, and love, the kind of love that never lies. And I have that in my children, in my friendships, and finally, in myself. So yes, I found out my husband had another family across town. But what I also found was something far more important. I found me. And that, in the end, is the story worth telling. Life has a way of teaching us lessons we never asked for. If you had told me years ago that my marriage would unravel, that I would discover the man I loved was living a double life, I would have laughed in disbelief. That kind of thing happened in soap operas. Not in my kitchen, not in my home, but it did. And it left scars that I will carry forever. Yet, those scars are not signs of weakness. They are reminders of survival. Every time I see them, I remember the nights I thought I couldn't go on and how I did anyway. I remember the mornings when getting out of bed felt impossible, but I rose because my children needed me. And I remember the day I finally looked in the mirror and saw, not a broken woman, but a strong one. There's something I want to share with you, if you're still listening. And I hope you are, because this is the part I wish someone had told me when I was drowning in betrayal. You will not stay in that pain forever. It feels endless when you're in it. The hurt, the rage, the confusion, you replay every memory, searching for answers you'll never find. You blame yourself, wondering what you did wrong, what you could have done differently. But none of that blame belongs to you. The betrayal was their choice, their lie, their burden to carry. Yours is to heal, and healing is not quick, or pretty, or perfect. Healing is messy. It's crying in the grocery store because you see his favorite cereal. It's holding your child while they cry and wishing you could take away their pain. It's sitting in silence, feeling hollow, and wondering if joy will ever return. But healing is also laughter sneaking back in when you least expect it. It's your child's smile lighting up the room again. It's the first night you sleep peacefully without waking up in tears. It's the slow, steady rebuilding of a life that is yours alone. And let me tell you, when that healing comes, it is beautiful, because it is yours. You earned it through every tear, every sleepless night, every step forward when you felt like collapsing. I know some of you listening might be in your own storm right now. Maybe it's betrayal, maybe it's abandonment, maybe it's a loss you never saw coming, and maybe you think you can't make it through, but you can, you will. I promise you this, the storm does not last forever. And on the other side, there is a version of you who is stronger than you ever imagined. So, don't give up. Don't believe the lie that you are ruined, or worthless, or unlovable. You are still whole, still worthy, still capable of joy. I often tell my children this now. We may not have the family we thought we did, but we have each other. And that is enough. And the truth is, it's more than enough. Because love, rooted in honesty and loyalty, is worth more than any grand illusion. Sometimes, I sit with a cup of tea in the quiet of the evening, and I think about that younger version of myself, the woman who believed every word Henry said, who trusted blindly, who would have given anything to keep her family whole. I wish I could reach back and tell her, it's going to hurt, but you're going to survive. And not just survive, you're going to rise. So maybe this story isn't really about Henry at all. Maybe it's about me, about my children, about the power of truth and resilience. And maybe it's about you too, about reminding you that no matter what betrayal or heartbreak you've faced, you still have the power to write your own ending. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for sitting with me in this truth, for holding space for my pain and my healing. And if it touched you in any way, if you saw yourself in my words, I ask you share it, not for me, but for the next person who feels alone in their storm. Sometimes, hearing someone else's survival is the first step toward believing in your own. Because here's the truth, we don't heal in silence, we heal in community, in sharing our stories, in realizing we are not alone. So, from one survivor to another, let me leave you with this. You are stronger than the betrayal, you are brighter than the darkness, and you are worthy of a love that will never lie. When I think of endings, I don't think of Henry walking out the door, or the nights I cried myself to sleep. I don't even think of the confrontation, or the moment I told my children the truth. Those were moments of breaking. Endings, yes, but not the real ending. The true ending is quieter. It's in the mornings when I wake up and no longer feel dread pressing on my chest. It's in the sound of my children's laughter drifting through the house, free and unguarded. It's in the peace that fills the air when I sit with a book, or a cup of tea, and realize I am not waiting for anyone anymore. The ending is knowing I survived, that we survived. For so long, I thought my story had been stolen from me, that Henry's betrayal had ripped away everything I built, leaving me with nothing but ashes. But I see now I still had the most important parts, my children, my strength, my ability to begin again. I don't tell you this story so you'll feel sorry for me. I tell it because there was a time when I believed I was alone, when I thought no one could possibly understand the weight of betrayal. And maybe right now, you feel the same. Maybe you're sitting in your own silence, wondering how you'll ever stand up again. I want you to hear me. You will. You absolutely will. The human heart is stronger than we give it credit for. It can break into 1,000 pieces, and still, somehow, it can keep beating. And if you nurture it, if you allow it, time and gentleness, it can even love again. Do I still carry pain? Of course. There are memories that sting, words that echo when I least expect them. But pain doesn't define me anymore. Hope does. Resilience does. The love I share with my children does. If there is one lesson I want you to take from my story, it's this. You are not what was done to you. You are not the betrayal, or the lies, or the heartbreak. You are what you choose to do next. And that choice, whether to stay broken or to rise again, belongs only to you. I chose to rise. And in that choice, I found freedom. So, to anyone listening who feels like they're trapped in the ruins of a life they didn't choose, please know, you can rebuild. It won't look the same as before. It might even look better, because this time, it will be yours, built on truth, built on strength, built on the unshakable knowledge that you are enough. My marriage ended, but my story didn't. In fact, in many ways, it began again. And this new chapter, it's one I am writing with honesty, with love, and with peace. So if you take anything from me, let it be this. Never let betrayal steal your belief in yourself. Never let lies convince you that you are less. And never, ever forget that even after the darkest night, the sun still rises. And so did I. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for walking with me through the pain, through the storm, and into the light on the other side. If my words touched you, if they gave you even a small spark of hope, I ask you carry that spark with you. Share it, pass it on, because hope multiplies when we give it away. This is not just my story anymore, it's ours. A reminder that we are stronger than the heartbreak, brighter than the lies, and always worthy of love that is true. And that, my dear friends, is the ending I choose.